Hello everyone, welcome to Tutorials by Decade. My name is Decade, and in this video we are going to work on creating a state machine and finishing up animating our player attack. So with that being said, let's hop right on into this. One thing I did forget to do last video that we're going to do in this video is our input. So if we go to our input, our player, and open up the player input, we're going to get this little screen here. And what we're going to do is we're going to add more actions. So we're going to hit the plus. We're going to call this attack. And then we are going to go to our bindings. We're going to bind, we're going to listen and hit the space bar or whatever key you want for the attack. Then we're going to do the same thing, binding, listen, and then whatever button you want to be attack on a joystick or Xbox controller. I'm doing the right trigger. And then again, make sure if you are using an Xbox controller, make sure you hit gamepad anyway. That's the universal for pretty much almost every controller on the market. Whereas if you do just the Xbox One, it'll work on an Xbox controller, but if someone's using something that's not an Xbox controller, it may not work. So whenever that's all said and done, hit Save Asset and close that out. Remember what you named this. I just named it Attack. There's going to be a second attack later on in the series. We'll name it like Attack 2 or something. But remember what you named this. As with most of my videos, I do talk about how naming is very important and remembering what you name things and how you named them. So capital A as opposed to a lowercase a and things like that. It is very, very important. Sorry, wife sneezed in the background. Anyway, it is very, very important that you remember all the names and how you named them and all that. So remember this is named Attack with a capital A. That is going to come into play here in just a little bit. But after everything is saved, you can close this out and we can get into scripting. So what we're going to do is for our player, we are going to go into our player script, our player controller. So before we do that, actually, we're gonna set up a state machine. And in order to do that, we're gonna go to Create, Mono Behavior Script, and we're just gonna name this Player State. Unity is gonna do its thing. And once that's done, we can open up Player State. So what we're going to do is we're going to get rid of everything here. And up here where it says public class and all this fun stuff, we're going to get rid of class and we're going to name it enum, E-N-U-M. And then we're going to get rid of the mono behavior as well as that colon there. And then we're just going to be player state. All right. And in here, we are going to add whatever state or states we want our player to potentially be in. So we're going to have idle, walking, dashing or sprinting, whatever you want to call it, attacking, using, which will be for like tools or secondary weapons, interacting, which will be for interacting with NPCs and other game objects, cut, scene, pause. So anytime that you want to pause the game for a cutscene, but you still need control of the player, or control of the player through code anyway, and then paused. So paused is going to be obviously for when the player has paused the game. That's all we need to do here, so Command S or Control S to save it. And I'm going to pause this video real fast. Alright, sorry about that. But now that we got our player state taken care of, this is the beginning of our state machine. And in order to use it, we need to go over to our player controller. One second, let me find my player controller on my notes here. There we go. All right. So we are going to need to make some changes here. So starting at the top, we're going to need to add some parameters or some variables for our attack anyway. So while we're up here, first things first, we need to reference our player state. So we're going to make a header, call it player state. Tooltip, the current state of the player. Then we're going to serialize that field. Then we're going to make a private player state, current state, and we're going to default it to player state dot idle. While we're here, let's go down to here and let's put in a header. Call it attacks. And we're going to do a tooltip here, and we're going to put child object that handles sword animation and colliders. And then we're going to do private sword attack controller and sword attack. Now it's going to give you an error because we have not created the sword attack controller yet. For now, we're just going to ignore that. Oh, one thing I forgot to do is I forgot to serialize the field. There we go. And then down here, we're going to do another tooltip and how long the attack state should last. Match the animation length. We're going to serialize this field in case we need to change it. And then we're going to do a private float attack duration. That's going to equal 0.33. 33F. That is roughly how long the attack animation lasts on 60 frames per second. So we're going to keep that as is for now. And then the only other thing we need to do down here is add a private float attack timer and make that 0F. All right. So our awake function here, we don't need to do anything here. This can stay the same. All right. On move, that's staying the same. Now remember earlier I said about how naming things is very important? Well, with our new input system from Unity, we want to do something here to make our player actually attack. In order to do that, we need to do private void on attack, and then input value. And then in here, if value dot is pressed, then we are going to try start attack. And again, that's going to give you an error here because we haven't created that yet. But the reason why it's important to remember what you name something is because when we're using a new input system, we want to do on, and then whatever action that we're doing. So in this case, attack. And I named it attack with a capital A, so it has to be that here. But if you noticed on, I think it's base NPC. I forget exactly where we put it. I'll find it a little bit later. But, you know, we had it on interact. And, you know, it did what we needed to do there. So yeah, we want to have that the same name. And try start attack we haven't done anything with yet. That's okay. We will be fixing that later. On disabled is going to stay the same. Now, fixed update is going to be different, and update is going to be a little bit different. Well, update itself is not going to be different, but the animate character is going to be different. So we're going to skip fixed update for now. We're going to come down to our animate character. We're going to essentially delete all this and redo it using our state machine. So we're going to do a switch statement. And we're going to call this current state. So what a switch is, it's going to do certain things based on certain things. So for instance, our current state, right? So we're going to do case player state dot idle. And when the player state is in idle, right now we're not going to do anything because there's nothing to do. But if you had like an idle animation or something like that, you would put that here. Okay. And I'm trying to figure out why I'm getting. Oh, I know why I'm getting an error. Never mind. All right. But we're not doing anything there. So we'll move on to the next one where we are going to do something. And we're going to do case player state dot walking. And underneath here, we're going to put handle movement animation. And we are going to create a separate animation here. As a matter of fact, what we're going to do is we're going to change this from player character to player control. And then same up here, we'll change this to player control because it makes a little bit more sense. So you're going to get an error for animation, but we're not going to worry about that right now. And then underneath that, we're going to put break. So underneath all of these cases, you need to end them with a break unless you're going right into the next case or if it's the last case. So like we didn't have to put break underneath this one because we're not doing anything here yet. But because we did something here, we had to put the break in. All right. And now we're going to work on the next case, which case player state dot attacking. And we're going to likely get some errors in here as well, but we'll fix that in a minute. But for now, we're going to do attack timer equal or minus equals time dot delta time. All right. If attack timer is less than or equal to 0f, then we're also going to check if sword attack not equals null, meaning that we actually have a sword attack there. We are going to do sword attack dot end attack. Now again, we're going to get an error because we haven't done any of this stuff yet. All right. We're going to do another if statement under that, and we're going to do if move input dot square magnitude is greater than 0.0001f. Then that means we're moving, so we're going to do change state, and you're probably going to get this mesh change state. Just click somewhere else. It's going to keep giving you that error until we do what we need to do here. But we're going to do player state dot walking. So what we're doing is we're checking to see if we're pushing our move. If we're holding in, A if we're using the keyboard, or left if we're using a joystick. But we're checking to see if we're moving, and if we are, we want to change our player state to walking. And then after we do that, we want to do handle movement animation, and there we go. And if we're not moving, then we're going to do an else. And then we're going to change state to player state dot idle. And then also handle movement animation. And then after the second bracket here, we're going to put break. And then we're going to set these ones up later, but we need to put them in here since we have all those cases. Let me just make sure I'm in the right place. I am. I'm within the case. So we want to actually get that over to there. And then we're going to do case player state dot dashing. Case player state dot using. Case player state dot interacting. Case player state dot cutscene pause. And then lastly, case player state dot paused. And since this is the last one, we do need to put the break underneath it. All right. So we need to, now that we have all of that done, this is how we're going to use our state machine. So as we progress later on, we're going to do things under idle, or we'll do things under dashing or using. And this is where we're going to put all of that. And it's only going to do what state we're in. So it's not going to do all of this if we're in the idle state. But if we are in the attacking state, it's going to do all of that. All right. We do need to fix something in the fixed update. So what we're going to do down here is we're going to do a private void fixed player control. And then up here, we're just going to get rid of this, and we're just going to put in fixed player control, and there we go. So in the fixed player control, we are going to freeze movement in any of these states. All right, so we're going to do if current state equals player state dot attacking. And then if you hold in and get these two little lines here, that means or. So or, and then we can hit enter to have a second line, and that way we're not bunching everything on the one line. Current state equals player state dot cutscene pause, or current state player state dot paused, or current state equals player state dot interacting. So if we're in any one of those four states, we're going to do rb dot linear velocity equals vector2 dot 0, and then return. So again, if we're doing any of these states, we don't want to move. So we're going to instantly set our linear velocity to 0. That way the player is no longer moving. All right. Now this is our normal movement. So it's the line that we deleted earlier. I should have just copied and pasted, but RB linear velocity equals move input times move speed. And then down here, we're going to pick walking or idle state. And then again, if move input dot square magnitude is greater than 0.0001f. That means we are moving, and we want to change state to player state dot walking. And then else change state player state dot idle. Nope, I forgot the semicolon up there. There we go. And that's all we need to do here. So now let's handle a couple other things. So in player control, we had a whole bunch of different things. We're now going to move that to here, to private void handle movement animation. So that's going to get rid of these errors for here. And now we just need to do a few things in here real fast. So we're going to do a bool is moving equals move input dot square magnitude greater than 0.0001f. So what that's going to mean is if we're pushing our input, whether it be the WASD buttons or the joypad, and our magnitude is greater than 0.001, then our bool is moving is true. Otherwise, it would be false. And then vector2 anim direction equals move input. And then down here, if is moving, then we need to kind of do all the things that we already did before. We need to if snap to cardinal for anim is on, which it should be. Then we're going to snap to axis, and we are going to do if mathf.abs anim direction.x is greater than or equal to mathf.abs anim direction y. Then we are going to snap our anim direction. So anim direction equals new vector2 mathf.sign anim direction.x 0f. So we're going to snap to our x x parameter here. And then else, we're going to do the same thing here. Anim direction equals new vector2 0f mathf.sign anim direction y. And then we'll snap to our y. So this is how we snap to our axis, which we, again, should have already been doing. If snap to cardinal is not on, then we're going to do else anim direction equals anim direction dot normalized. And then down here, we're going to do last look direction equals anim direction. And then lastly, this should be our, if we're not moving, so we're going to do else anim direction equals last look direction. And then underneath here, we're going to do anim dot set bool is moving to is moving. Then anim dot set float move x to anim direction dot x. And then anim dot set float move y to anim direction dot y. And that is how we're going to set our animations. And again, that should have gotten rid of the errors for these. Don't worry, we're going to be getting rid of the rest of the errors here in just a second. We're going to now create private void try start attack. And this should get rid of the error at the very beginning up here. Try start attack, yep. So now we need to do our attacks. So first, we're going to only let certain states attack. Okay? Oh, we don't want that yet. Let's get rid of that. Getting ahead of myself. So if our current state equals player state dot idle, or if our current state equals player state dot walking. So for now, those are the only two states we want to be able to attack from. All right. So we're going to change our state to player state dot attacking. And then our attack timer is going to equal the attack duration. And then here's where we're going to do the player animation. So anim dot set bull is attacking. And we're going to set that to true. And then down here, we're going to do sword animator. And we're going to do if sword attack not equals null, meaning we have one. Then we're going to do sword attack dot play attack, and then last look direction. And this will likely give us an error, but we will fix that in a minute. But what we're doing here is if we try to start the attack, meaning the player hit the attack button, we're going to make sure our states are either idle or walking. Then we're going to change our state to attacking. We're going to set the attack timer to the attack duration. We are going to play the player animation, and we are going to play the sword animation. And one of the last things we need to do is get rid of the errors for the change state. So we're going to do a private void change state, and then we're going to look for a player state, and we're going to call that new state. So in here, all we're going to do is if our current state equals the new state, meaning if we're in idle and for whatever reason somewhere code is trying to change us to idle, we're just going to return and not do anything. So here's our exit logic. So when we're exiting a state, we go if current state equals player state dot attacking. All right. We want to exit that and go anim dot set bull is attacking to false. So if you're exiting from one state to another state and we're leaving that state after we change states, you might want to have like some sort of animation or a message or something pop up. This is where we're going to do all that. All right, and then at the end of all of our exit logic, to make sure it works right, we want our current state to equal a new state. And that's how we will change states. So again, anything after this, but before this, is where we're going to put any of our exit logic. So that way, when we're exiting a state, we can have something happen, like a message pop up or an animation play or a sound play or something. And then underneath this, we can have any enter logic. So if we're entering into a state, maybe you want a message to pop up or something. For right now, we're not doing any of that. So the only exit logic we're doing is when we're exiting our attack state. We're just making sure the animator goes back to false. That's all we're doing. And speaking of that, that is all we're doing in this for right now. we still have an error here, and we are going to fix that right now. So if we go into Unity here, if I can pull it up, hold on, give me a second. My Unity is being very strange. There we go. If we go into Unity, you're going to see a bunch of errors and all that. That's fine. What we want to do is under Player, we want to right-click, go to Create, go to Mono Behavior Script, and we want to do Sword Attack Controller. And then we are going to open up the Sword Attack Controller. And we don't need to do much in here, but we're going to do a header, and then animation. And here we're going to do the tooltip. We're going to do the animator for the sword attack, or the sword attacks. There we go. Then we're going to do serialized field, and then private animator, sword animator. And then down here, we're going to do a couple read only. So I'm not going to get too much into this right now. If you really are interested, you can easily look it up. But what we're doing is we're essentially reading some information, and we're going to use that information to change a few things. So again, I'm not going to get too into this right now, but just follow along, trust the process, it'll work. We're going to do private static read only int is attack hash equals animator dot string to hash is attacking. And we're going to do this 2 more times. So private static read only int move x hash equals animator dot string to hash move x. And lastly, private static read only int move y hash. And then animator dot string to hash move y. All right. Now that you have that done, we're going to do a private void awake. And we're going to do if sword animator equals null. Then we're going to do sword animator equals get component animator. So it already kind of figured out what I wanted to do. So there we go. And that's all we need to do in awake. Now we need to do a public void play attack. And we're going to look for vector 2 and then direction, or just dir for direction. And then here we're going to do if sword animator is null, meaning there is one. We're going to throw up a debug error, so debug.log error, and then no, actually we're going to do sword attack controller, so that way it knows where the error is coming from, or that way you know where the error is coming from. And then no sword animator for sword animations. And then return. Otherwise, if we have our sword animator in place, we're going to do sword animator dot set float move x hash direction x, and then sword animator dot set float move. I messed all this up. This is supposed to be x hash, not y hash. There we go. And this is supposed to be move y hash direction y. And then lastly, sword animator dot set bool is attack hash to true. And then lastly, we just need to end the attack. So again, public void end attack. And then here we're going to do if sword animator. Oh. No, what? Sword animator is null. We're just going to return. We already have a debug log error up here, and this will play before this will play, so we don't need to put another error message here. And then we just need sword animator dot set bool is attack hash to false. All right. So now that we did that, we can go back to our player controller, and now that should have gotten rid of this error right here. And we shouldn't have any errors here. Yeah. So now that that is all set, we are going to go back to Unity. Unity is going to compile a few things. And what we need to do is, on our sword attack, we need to add a component, and we need to actually not add a component, go away. We need to get the sword attack controller on here. And the sword animator will be the sword attack component itself. So there you go. That is not all. There is one other thing we need to do. Under the player controller script where it says sword attack, we just need to bring that sword attack in there and drop that in there. Now, if we did everything right, and if I explained everything the right way, and you followed along, hopefully this won't make a fool out of me. But if we hit play, we're still able to move around. And now we're able to attack, but for whatever reason, our swords are not showing up. Why are our swords not showing up? You know, one thing I did forget to do, go to our animations, and maybe this is it. Maybe this is all that it really is. But under animations, find the player sword, go to each one of these. We don't want to loop them, so click on each one and get rid of the loop time. And while we're at it, for the player attacks, get rid of the loop time on that too. I wonder if it is something as stupid and simple as that. Let's find out. Is attacking. Let's, cause I know when we were doing this, I had an issue. Is attacking true? Okay. And then is attacking false? There it is. Yeah, for whatever reason that needed to be redone. I don't know what happened there. But yeah, so now we have a player that will go around and attack. Now the one thing that you notice, sometimes you're able to change direction before the attack is done. That is something we're going to have to fix later. But nonetheless, we now have a player that is capable of attacking and able to move around. And we have our sword attack plus our state machine. So I fast forwarded, or I'm likely going to fast forward me looking for my mistake. So hopefully that makes the video a tad bit shorter, because this went a little bit longer than I anticipated. But with that being said, I'm going to end the video here. If you learned anything or if you liked it, make sure you give it a big old thumbs up. I do appreciate that. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe, as I have videos like this coming out all the time and I don't want you to miss anything. And with all that out of the way, as always, thank you, have a good one, and I'll see you in the next video.